Welcome to this edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here was in Mendham. Close enough. Anyway, once was. Life. All these experiences. Live and learn, all that kind of crap. It's irritating. So I thought I'd do comments just because, the subject I wanted to get on is just, it goes back to the beginning and the fact that we're just machines, and I just don't have anything new, and so I thought I'd wait until I have something fancy to draw or something to make that kind of argument about just the rudimentary function and how every single thing, just about every cell that moves against another cell inside of us has some ulterior motive, that's basically has to do with this idea of conquering and winning, and not for any good reason, just because that's what you're designed to be as a survivor, and surviving means winning. You gotta win all the time. All of my ancestors, I've sort of made this argument before, they all won. Okay, I mean, it's just a fact. They survived the plague, so they made sure the poor people died instead. That kind of thing. They played the game, and probably often played it in some horrible way. Where the other guy jumped on the grenade. That kind of thing. They didn't. No heroes. No. Just shitheads, and that's always going to be your lineage because you're a survivor. And so that's sort of an interesting subject, blah, 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 but we won't bother with that next time, some other day. So instead we'll see where the comments take us. So the first one is sort of indicative of the subject a little. Men are the devils of the earth, and the animals are the tormented souls. So this is poetry, scapegoating, bullshit, blah, 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 blah. And if we were to define ourselves, what's our biggest crime? I mean, obviously there's a crime in the overt action of, say, driving your car over a child, let's say, and causing it, paralyzing it. So we'll make it a horrible thing. Instead of just an instant death, it'll be some kind of, many years of retardation and dysfunction. That would be a horrible thing. Now, if the guy did it intentionally, it makes it even more horrible, right? In a way, you're just saying, well, that's a brain gone wrong. So what's our biggest crime? In my opinion, is the fact that we have this capacity to do this intelligent reasoning thing, to properly categorize things. This is a black pen, this is a red pen. We can identify all this kind of stuff. And yet we don't do a lot of that when it has anything to do with what's in it for me. So again, the DNA shows itself, because it takes a perfectly functional brain, right? When what's in it for me isn't involved, I can see black and I can see red. But all of a sudden, when what's in it for me is involved, and there's something in it for me, all of a sudden I can make this red pen into a black pen, and this into, it's that corruption, the fact that humans don't have enough conversation about the fact that they're doing this reasoning thing pretty poorly, just on the face of our civilization. You could just look at the face of it and see that we've been doing this advertising thing to finance our entertainment, and it's just so overtly grotesque, this salesmanship bullshit, this idea that we're going to shyster each other. I mean, we can't even get that right. We're doing the what's in it for my corporation, what's in it for my pension, what's in it for my interests, and that's the conversation that should take place. And all these people pretending to be defenders of some sort of rudimentary decency, like the teachers union and the government employee unions. Again, I'm all for labor being fairly treated, but they're not looking for fairness anymore. They're just doing this what's in it for me shit, and they don't give a shit about the consumer, the taxpayer. It's just so obvious, and it's just so disgusting. That's what people are using their brains for, is just to scheme their interest. And we have totally endorsed that as a civilization. Scheming your self-interest is good, and the majority takes advantage, and so that gets to these subjects, like the vaping thing or some other thing. The majority picks their vices are sacred, their booze, their sugar, and their chocolate. Their vices are all sacred vices. Oh no, those ones I don't have, those addictions I don't have, let's slaughter the fuck out of those people. It's just so obvious how badly we use our brains. That people are allowed to get away with it, that some bell doesn't go off every time somebody's doing the obvious. Oh, they're only talking out of their what's in it for them. They're not talking out of any kind of rational what's in it for civilization. They're just making excuses, and then all the meat eaters do it, the slimy dicked whatever, people, with their foreskin. It's just so obvious their bias. I don't want any. I don't want to have to compete with any other kind of penises. It's like it's like if there was surgery for big noses, you could do when a kid was just a little kid. It was really easy and simple. All the big noses would be like, oh, I don't want all those small noses to compete with. Just obvious. Anyway, leave it natural. Why? It's just so stupid. Oh, having your wisdom teeth pulled out, that's a completely unnatural act. Oh, no, don't do, yes, we must do that. That's, only it's just the right thing to do, they don't give a fuck about nature when it, again, it just, what's in it for me? As the Anaconda philosophy, it just runs the world. And we should see that, obviously, and just say, oh, that's disgusting. It should be obvious, But anyway, so we'll read some of the responses. Animals torment each other all the time. Yes, but they don't do it having any knowledge. And here we have the knowledge that the other little beasties suffer. Now, none of the things tormenting. A praying mantis is chowing down. He has no idea. There's no thought that runs through his head saying, is this morally correct? Does this equation make any sense? I mean, I eat 17 little bugs a day. That means I torment them, torture them 17 different times. I'm committing torture. And here I am concerned about my one death and how I will die. And, he doesn't do that part. But, he doesn't have that conversation. He doesn't make any kind of balanced equation and say, do I cause more harm than I'm worth? That I prevent? And you say, well, what harm does he prevent? Well, he does prevent some harm in sense that the bugs don't overpopulate the world, but I'm just saying that it's right there in front of him. Like, oh, I should find a better solution to this. Maybe we should give bugs condoms. You'll find some better way to do this than torturing the animal, eating it alive. Whap it on the head first. Do something. But they have no idea. So again, we have full knowledge that the other squirmies are squirming for a reason. They're screaming and yelling and doing all that crap for a reason, because it's painful and it hurts and it's unpleasant and it's bad. And we just don't give a fuck. And that's the bigger indictment. Mankind is just keeping the tradition going. He's created a new tradition. Have intelligence as a weapon. Okay, it's not something. So you can say it's very positive intelligence, and then there's a point where it becomes predatory. When intelligence is used defensively, you could say it's got some kind of better integrity than when it's used offensively. Maybe that's a distinction. Your notion of the natural world is foolishly romantic, ignorantly romantic. Yes, but yes, foolish. I mean, you can't even say people are ignorant, right? They're belligerently deluded. So your notion of the natural world is belligerently deluded. Is probably more accurate. I mean, they've aggressively attempted to fuck the truth, and they've done it. Success. They've well raped it. True. So he's conceding the argument. Good. Sad to say. Let's see. Life is the problem, not just human beings. Yes, well, life is this idea, all right, the genetic form of life, of create a whole bunch of copies. So most of them get destroyed in some sort of contest. So the better bits, the bits better at being alive, right, are the ones that create the next generation. And so those genes, those character, those traits will be passed on, blah, 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 blah. That's the mechanism, and that's insidious. I mean, on its face, it's just something. If that's the game we actually played, you know, we actually gave birth to 1,000 little children, and then we just started wiping them out in maliciously horrible ways to see which one could dance the fastest, and then, you know, whap it, you know. We'd say, no, this isn't the way to live. We'd figure it out if it was more personal. Who wrote such beautiful poetry? Question mark. Whatever that is. Yeah. Beautiful. It's just tripe. People aren't part of the ecosystem. Mostly that's where you're wrong. I mean, even though we've created weapons, you know, that look unnatural, it's all just taking advantage of what is naturally around. So you're almost arguing that somehow, you know, if a chimpanzee figures out how to pick up a stick and shake it at something, that somehow it's you know, it's not part of the ecosystem anymore. I mean, sure it is. We just consume and destroy and make extinct. Making extinct is a good thing, so you don't even have that right, Mr. Soylent Green. And again, the Soylent Green thing is another piece of the propaganda, right? I mean, I fell for it as a kid, right? Oh, they're eating people. But then you think about it a little bit. You just think about it a little bit. Well, yeah, if I have to go out and eat their bloody flesh or something, okay, well, that's gross. But if you can turn the dead people into a potato chip, you know, I mean, a Frito, a Dorito, I'm in. You know, no problem. I don't get plague or anything, you know what I mean? You make it antiseptic and all that kind of crap. What the hell? Why do I give a shit? I mean, it's a potato chip. It tastes good. Yummy. What's the problem? I don't see any problem. The person's dead. They're not using their dead cells for anything important. And it kind of just solves this whole problem of, you know, realistically, we all can't have tombstones in some green pasture somewhere. So, you know, it sort of gets us over this little hump of our ego problem and figuring out how, yeah, well, we really are fodder for the next generation, and that's really the whole function of living, is to sit there and just build this next better generation. And then the irony of that, even the fact that although I have the word eugenics is horrible, you know, I mean, the ideas, the way that Nazis turned it into master race kind of crap. But the fact is, we're involved in some sort of eugenics in the sense that we are modifying, okay, it's just a fact, the human race. I mean, we're, you know, eventually there won't be any blue-eyed people anymore. These little certain things like that are just on the way out, not on the way in anymore. And, you know, not that that's a tragedy. I'm not saying it's something anybody should cry about or anything like that. I'm just saying that we've made these decisions, and we're invested in them, and they have certain consequences, and that's just a fact. And so we are doing these experiments in the sense that we save people, you know, with surgeries. We prevent their death. We keep them alive, and they end up having kids after they have things like cancer. I mean, there's people, you know, my sister did it. I mean, they have a kid after they have cancer, and you're just like, you can't figure out that you're really not qualified anymore, that you've already found a defect in your structure, you know, it's kind of overt and obvious, and that you might be passing that down, you know, and that you're just guaranteeing that your prodigy will have to have some sort of dramatic heart valve surgery or some other kind of thing when they're 50 years old. That's not much of a gift. You know, it's not very rational. And so we're sort of devolving. You know, we're evolving to our civilization, which is, we're essentially pulling a lot of our the strength of our nature out. I'd say they only did that to me. You know, I had horrendously large canine teeth when I was a kid, and they made the decision to extract them against my wishes, of course, and because they were great teeth. I mean, I could, you know, I could kill things. You know, you could do anything with them. They were just great teeth. They were a little painful, I have to admit, though. I mean, they were a little bit of stress, you know, on the gums and such. But well, anyway. But the point is it was sort of a reflection of something, that I was a bit of a throwback, and that maybe I had some other traits that went with that throwback. You know, that maybe I have you know, my fight-flight response is more keyed, and so maybe I needed to be psychologically understood as maybe a bit of a throwback. But well, anyway, you know, so it gets kind of complicated. But I mean, clearly that's all stuff we're winning out of existence. Is you can't have a certain kind of personality. You have to have a compliant personality. You have to have you know, all these things that the rewards and punishments we've set up are just creating people who are feeble. Well, even the idea of Viagra, you know, as a concept. Now, it's great if you're using it just to have sex, but if you're using it to procreate, right, there's a certain, you know, I mean, if you can't, you know, then maybe you shouldn't, because you're not functioning, right? You're dysfunctional. So it's another one of those clues that should be saying, well, you know, maybe I shouldn't give impotency to my son. I mean, it's kind of a lousy thing to give him. Well, anyway, just saying. And then maybe, you know, if I'm taking it because my wife just is a mess, you know, and I just, you know, have to find some way to do it without any personal interest, you know, a substantial personal interest. I don't know how to, you know, whatever. Naturally generated motivation. Again, aren't we just logical? I mean, it doesn't take much logic to figure out that that's what we're actually doing. You know, is we're guaranteeing a kind of failure eventually. You know, a kind of dysfunction that's going to become so hystemic. You know, so many dysfunctions are being tolerated in the breeding pool that, you know, all these people going to fertilization clinics and all this other, I mean, it's just, they should logically understand that I have no business doing that. That's stupid. Alright, anyway. I guess I agree about vaping hysteria. I'm very skeptical about the phenomenon until doctors come up with a mechanism that's causing these illnesses. Well, in the first place, it's 6 out of millions of people vaping. 6, and all over the world too. There's absolutely no connection, you know, to this tiny, this completely unscientific survey of 6 deaths. No connection to the rest of the world that's doing a ton of vaping, you know, China and all the rest of these places. So there's just no credibility to this at all. This isn't science. This isn't. They shouldn't even use the word doctor. I mean, because some doctor comes out like that Dr. Kukabe, and you know, who ran for president, who's, you know, an evolutionist, you know, Perot, and the black guy. I mean, crazy shit, you know. Because doctors can talk crazy shit, you shouldn't you shouldn't be impressed. You can't be impressed by the word doctor anymore. It really just doesn't mean anything. Come up with a mechanism causing the illnesses. It's funny that Walmart is going to stop selling vaping stuff and will continue selling cigarettes. See, it's not funny. It's just an illustration of how all rationality has been thrown in the garbage to scapegoat. You know, and this is just Nazi kind of propaganda, right? This is just the idea that who cares about the truth? Let's just sell this horn theory and, you know, this somehow copper or money pinching pennies is something Jews do all day. You know, whatever. Just sell the propaganda. And it's just scapegoat. It's just bullshit. Like all the world's problems are somehow going to get focused on these 6 deaths, which makes absolutely no sense. And again, seafood, you know, shellfish kills 10,000 people from food poisoning every year. And we don't, no hysteria, no warning labels, no anything, right? 10,000. And we're talking about 6 very unrelated deaths. And now we have the evidence to say we need to tax it, we need to ban it, we need to control it. I mean, it's so obviously not well motivated. It's just so obvious. And you're just, how can I be on a planet where people can't figure out how obvious that this has nothing to do with the specific subject and has everything to do with just simple scapegoating, with just simple, people want something, they want to be told, just shoot that guy. They want a simple game to play, okay, black, white, whatever, you know, they want some simple answer, okay, they don't want anything vague, you know, complicated. So yeah, let's just blame all the world's problems on vaping. It's just so silly in so many respects, but anyway, and here it's something that was started because it basically took the teeth, the negative, harmful teeth out of tobacco, nicotine addiction. So now you could be a nicotine addict without threatening your health. And the health threat was always exaggerated. I'm not saying there isn't one. There is a real health threat. But again, they've been counting people as smoking-related deaths because they had a cigarette when they were 11 years old. And they'll actually write down cause of death, smoking-related. They actually do that statistically. It's just so silly. Alright, he's hot, dude. Oh, okay, this is a reply. So a bunch of replies. I read this week that Brad Pitt is going to religion from being an atheist. I doubt that's happening, but whatever, fine. Actors are stupid as fuck. Okay, I don't know if you know that or not, but even when they go to college, they take drama courses. I mean, they're really, really dumb, especially nowadays. You know, really dumb. You know, in the old days, it used to be like real people from real life sometimes became actors. So they were actually somebody who actually had a job in the real world and all of that kind of crap. But now we sort of make child actors that just kind of, you know, iconize them and just make them permanent actors. You know. Who's he and who should care? Is he a daddy figure we should all follow and listen to? I don't know. I don't know exactly what that means. You know, he's Mr. Smith, didn't you know? So I don't know. Did he remake It's a Wonderful Life or something? Mr. Smith? I don't know. Was that one of the? I saw him. He was a couple of movies where he's an angel or something. I don't know. Well, anyway, who cares? Yes, that's the category I'm in, I'm afraid. He's he's a hot dude from Fight Club. Well, as actors go, he's probably better looking than most. You know, so I'll grant you that. Inglorious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, blah blah blah. No homo, but no, he's still an atheist agnostic. So that's an interesting subject, this whole frickin' agnostic crap, right? So this is more just obvious bullshit. I mean, just obvious irrational bullshit is these people who saying you have some necessity logically to be agnostic on the subject of God because you can't prove there's no God. They don't say you have to be agnostic on the existence of the three blind mice or Red Riding Hood or Goldilocks. You don't have to be agnostic on any of those wacky theories, right? If somebody was to propose they're real, you would say that's silly. And we know where the gods came from. We know they're just like cartoon characters. That means like every civilization had some dopey, you know, bird gods and four-headed things and all kinds of crap that were just obvious cartoon characters, obviously made up, and there's absolutely no distinction. There's absolutely nothing about the special Mohammed story and the special Jeebus story that somehow separates it from the rest of the fables and the nonsense. And there's every bit of evidence that none of it really happened. Like, nobody witnessed Jesus raise the dead because they didn't have any faith. Right? They had no confidence that Jesus was the Son of God, and yet we're supposed to believe they all witnessed him raising the dead. See, does that make any sense? No, it makes no sense at all. If you saw somebody raise the dead, you'd be fucking impressed, no doubt about it. And obviously these people weren't impressed. So obviously these things didn't happen. So if there was a Jesus, he wasn't no frickin' magic man. He didn't have God powers and all that bullshit. Well, anyway, so this is a bullshit story, just as bullshit as Bullwinkle the moose. and you just say, I'm not agnostic on Bullwinkle being a real thing, so why should I be agnostic on the subject of somebody's made-up fable about Jeebus or anybody else? It's just a silly fish story. Has nothing to do with anything real. I mean, if it has a connection to something real, the story is so exaggerated that it might as well be me telling you a fish story about, I caught a fish this big and then I turn it into a Tyrannosaurus and, two-headed Tyrannosaurus. I mean, the story has nothing to do with the reality. So being agnostic is retarded. And it's just duplicitous. To say you're agnostic is to say you're playing, I'm pretending to play a game, that I can't tell the difference between fables and fairy tales and cartoons and whatever else there is. Yes, you can. And you can tell they're all made up. And the fact is, you can tell that the God story is made up. The evidence is there. You just don't care. And you want to play some, again, I don't know what game it is, but to me it's useless cowardice. I mean, it's just, that's the game, right? You're just being a coward. Because if you say you're an atheist, somehow you've committed to saying to other people, you're a dumbass, and you don't want to do that because that might irritate them. But anyway, most people who label themselves as atheists are agnostic. No. I would say if they're labeling themselves an atheist, take them at their word and they've decided it's a fable. It's bullshit. It's a story. And I shouldn't be agnostic on cartoon stories or any other story. I'm not agnostic on those. I don't think Winnie the Pooh is living in some 100-acre woods somewhere. By definition. So fuck you. There's no definition. It's just, they're not agnostic by definition. They're really not. To be agnostic means you have some confusion. You're not sure. You're uncertain. I'm quite certain Bugs Bunny is not a real character that lived on planet Earth. Fuck you for telling me I should be uncertain. No one can be completely sure. Well, of course, we can be beyond reasonable doubt. And that's the only standard we're ever going to have because, yes, we're not given the entire videotape of every detail of every atomic action that ever took place in all of human history, or history. But we can be damn certain that we have certain patterns we figured out, and the pattern of full of shit human, we've seen that pattern before. It's all over the place. To be agnostic on the fallibility of human storytelling would be retarded. You should be quite confident that until they show you, there's no good reason to believe them. Alright, no one can be completely sure, but the lack of evidence points heavily towards there being no omnipotent God. No, it's not just the lack of evidence that points to it. We have a ton of evidence that demonstrates it's a story. Like every other story, it's been changed and perverted by preposterous advantageous exaggerations and manipulations. The whole book was put together for a purpose, okay, and the purpose is, basically to keep people retarded. What's love got to do with it? Whatever the hell that is, it might be laughing out loud, something or other. Yeah, so the subject of this word, love, is just that's another word where, it's had such a negative impact, I would say, in human psychology and function, just because we're labeling things like, a really crude, self-interested desire, and we're saying, well, she has it, she has perked breasts, and she has all these little things. Oh, I'm in love. Is that love? Come on. And then this more complex thing where something can become endearing, or you can get attached to it like a nicotine, or caffeine or something, and it's an addiction, a dependency. We call that love. And again, all of these things are so much related to these whole things involved in relationships. What's in it for me? you know, how does this person make me stronger? You know, these kind of things get into it. And we know that the real catch is, though, is that you can't usually have the one thing. You don't get the vacation without the bed bugs and all the other crap that come with it. And so, you know, over time you figure out, I'm not going to take any more trips, you know, because, yeah, they're just expensive. And, you know, you get a little bit of stuff that might be worth it. And the rest of it is just, ugh. That's my impression, generally speaking. You know, you have to have certainly have to have a certain frame of mind to survive vacations, and I just don't have it. I like my routines. What are your thoughts on death and how it's forever but instantly passes us by? Well, I don't know if it does instantly pass us by, but whatever. I mean, there's the last time you fall asleep, so to speak, last time you lose consciousness, but obviously we experience death in a sense every time you go to sleep. I dream a lot, so obviously it's hard for me to relate, because I don't just wake up saying, oh, nothing happened. I am, you know, oh, last thing I knew, you know, I went to bed. You know, that's never my impression. There's always some sort of thing. I just, you know, I just had an elaborate event happening, stuff. You know, my brain just plays video games all night. I mean, really, you know, not literally. I just mean that it's just playing a synthetic, I'm living a synthetic life in my dreams. And I always have them. I'm like, I can't say I could remember one day this week where I woke up without remembering, you know, that I was just dreaming. I woke up in the middle of the dream, and so I was quite aware of where I just was. I was back at my old house, except there was an elephant in the backyard and some other stupid things, you know, where, you know, it's changed, but it's different. The dead people are, you know, I'm dealing with people, you know, I'm dealing with people who aren't alive anymore and all kinds of weird shit like that. Well, anyway, that nothing thought, that nothing, though not being alive, that nothing, though not being alive, is something that can be exclaimed through our lack of awareness. Well, forget that. That sentence was, you could have done without that one. I'm going to pretend it's a fable. Awareness via sleep, at least in a way. Let's see. You know, it can be exclaimed through our lack of awareness via sleep, at least in a way. Alright, yes, it's just like being asleep, except you don't dream. It's one of the notions that for some reason makes me very uncomfortable and frightened of death. Yeah, no, I mean, everybody has to relate to it in their own way. My apprehensions about being dead is just that I haven't finished, you know, what I'm doing. So I think it's somehow important. You know, I'm stamping these paper plates or whatever. You know, my existence is doing something, and I have these projects, and it's like, well, who will finish my projects, and what'll happen to, and you know, I don't like leaving things unfinished, and I don't like loose ends, and there's always loose ends, right? There's people you care about that maybe you're kind of important to, in the sense that you give them some security, and if you're gone, they're going to be, you know, they're going to be more vulnerable to some sort of tragedy or something. And so those kind of thoughts are the things that bother me the most about the fact that I could croak tomorrow. Is that, you know, I just don't like leaving things underdone, and it just seems like it's been underdone. I haven't secured everything on the boat, or however you want to put it, so the boat can't go by itself without me finishing. Anyway, it's one of the notions that for some reasons makes me very, okay, fine, okay. Do you have an accurate view of death? What the hell would that be? I certainly understand that my existence is a moment in time, and that's it. And the only implications are the part that led to me existing, the world that existed at the same time and influenced me and created the personality I have, and the thoughts that run through my head, and the fact that pieces of me, like this video, will like pieces of skin or something. They're left behind, so there's a dust trail. Um, you know, I guess it's more than a dust trail. I mean, we in some ways overtly leave journals behind and different things. I mean, my father had a little journal for a while when he was a kid, and he wrote down some stuff for about a year and a half maybe. And so it's just sort of interesting, but you get a little glimpse of, you know, a moment of somebody's life, and you know, they might have something in there that's, you know, got some enduring value, or might mean something to somebody else, or might trigger some kind of thoughts. And so there are pieces of you that are left behind, and maybe the impressions of other people, even, and how you've changed them by interacting with them. So we all have a legacy of some kind. Well, anyway, do you have an accurate view, and how can I change my view regardless? Yeah, that just takes work, you know, the hammering. You have to keep hammering at your own psychology sometimes to try to break the instinctive reaction. So you have to think of that every concept that bothers you is like a snake. So it's like your reaction when you're a kid to your first spider or your first snake, and you're all apprehensive, and you're you know, uncertain about how to interact with it. And you might have some innate fear from other people's propaganda, you know, the propaganda that's been ingrained into you. And so you have to, you know, kind of hammer your way through some of those irrationalities if they're irrational. And you can just view and understand them to be. Like, say, if you could understand that the snake's not poisonous, that even if it bites you, it has little tiny teeth, it can't do much damage, so why am I afraid? Let him bite me, so what? Big deal. You have to do whatever you can to change the pattern of thought and make the thing a positive thing rather than a negative thing. You have to try to see it as a, you know, the snake goes to McDonald's, or the snake goes to the, you know, you have to try to make it something that's not a problem. You know, just associate it. So it's always guilt by association. You have negative associations. You have to create positive associations. And with some concepts, that's easy to do because it's just a concept, so you can do all that internally. Now, things that have to do with events in life, those are a little more tricky, because then you have to deal with your physiological reactions that can be a lot harder to control. It just seems that the more I think about it, like, the more it seems like a simple set of Legos. Okay. Also, what is your thought on people that have these near-death experiences? I think it's obviously when you're near death, you're not dead. So, and obviously it's just a drug-induced, in the sense your own body creates a lot of chemistry when you're dying, or when you're having overt stress, you know, a heart attack or something. Clearly lots of weird chemistry takes place, and so clearly you're going to have some fucked up mental images. The light thing usually just has to do with, I think, with the fact that you're soaking in bits of the environment, and it's one of the natural things you have, are, you know, these spots before your eyes and all that kind of stuff. So that's something your brain creates, so I don't think there's anything magical about it. The ones where they sense the bliss, I'd say, is sort of fits with the idea that obviously your body, once it gets to a certain point of dysfunction, then yes, you start losing awareness of the tension in your muscles and everything else. You're almost kind of paralyzed, and so there's an advantage to being paralyzed, in the sense that, you know, if you have a half amputated leg or something, being paralyzed, cool, because, you know, I don't have to deal with that, you know. Anyway, claiming to see God or hell. Well, obviously they're interpreting what they saw. I don't think too many of them actually see God or hell, but whatever. Obviously it's just going to be their imagination creating a vision of these things. They don't actually see God and actually see hell, because those places don't exist. They're just silly fables. I mean, you know, if you're obsessed with fabology, maybe you'll go see Red Riding Hood at her original home or something. You know, her whatever plantation. Yeah, I can see how some of my questions may have not made sense to you. Yes, that is a problem with human beings. I probably didn't word them proper enough. Regardless, and again, good video. Thank you for responding to my comment questions. You've got nearly 12K subscribers. Do good work. 12K. I've been on here 12 years. It's horrible. It's a dismal. But whatever. I hear you on points in I hear you on points in constructive criticism made towards my videos. My mind would often elude me and move too fast, trying to keep up. It's difficult to explain the phenomena that this is entirely, but it's part of the problem. Well, this is sort of what I was talking about. Is that we're all victims of our heritage, and we're all aberrants, you know. And there's always this idea that pieces of old code end up being, somebody's going to be the black sheep, so to speak. Somebody's going to be born with the two-colored eyes or whatever the defect is. So that's part of it. And then the society is going to torment you in different ways in your maturation, and some of those torments will leave permanent scars. So everybody's got to view the world through pretty dirty glasses psychologically, you know. And the ones that get away with it are the ones that are majority psychosis, and the ones that don't get away with it are minority psychoses. And that's really all it comes down to. I mean, clearly there's a psychoticness to the the normalcy of our civilizations. They're ugly. Okay, they're fat ass all over the place. Fat ass and spandex bullshit. I mean, it's hilariously dysfunctional. Yeah, let's see. Difficult, and that's part of the problem. I have to make points to an obsessive completion, a complete, holistic, weird word, view from inducing the parts. Yeah, we all have our compulsions, our preferences, you want to call them that, our, you know, proper way of washing hands, and people have all kinds of, you know, neurotic obsessions. And I can't let go until that feeling goes away. Well, you probably can, you just don't want to. But anyway, I would often get distracted with branching thoughts in the meantime before I complete a specific thought pattern. And it would often become self-feeding cycle of negatively driving me to complete a point. Well, taking notes sometimes helps. Even this kind of order, you know, this imposes a certain format on me, you know, reading comments. Because I can pick sentences, I can pick paragraphs, I can pick whole ideas. You know, there's lots to work with as pieces. And it keeps me, okay, in some sense, it does force me to expand where I would maybe go further in, you know, in terms of detail. Then I'll say, well, wait a minute, I've spent 15 minutes on one sentence, I got to move along. So, I mean, it can impose a kind of order that maybe would be helpful. So if you took notes or you had some other, you know, some other triggers to keep you from your obsession. It is a painful part of my everyday existence, defense mechanism, needing control and knowing how all makes a difference, but taking it too far. Yeah, well, I would argue that that's the price you pay for a kind of enlightenment. Awareness is dangerous. If you know, regular people kind of don't know the trees have sledgehammers they're hiding behind their back, and if you know they have sledgehammers, you know, it just makes walking through the woods a lot less fun. And if you know about all the risks in life and all of this stuff, it just makes it all look like a bunch of daggers, you know, and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this, you know, hop the dagger game? Why am I playing that? It's just, that doesn't sound like a nice way to spend an afternoon. So obviously that's a real phenomenon. Intelligence knowledge. You know, it's good for the world, but isn't going to be good for you personally. It's kind of like the jumping on the grenade thing. You know, I mean, having the capacity to ethically understand an obligation. You know, that's just a pragmatic, practical fact of efficiency. You know, knowing the right answer. It's less fun because it means you just can't do the what's in it for me thing. The simple problem was that I couldn't necessarily stay on subject, and it was either confusion or things making sense and me not being able to figure them out from overthinking to suit my high expectations and standards of myself. Biting more than you can chew, yeah, maybe. Also, internally distinguishing, identifying problems, external problems from myself, and how to blow it out of proportion by defending my own perceived actions, then viewing all the problem. Yes, well, whatever. I'm just saying most of our thought processes motivated by rationalizations. You know, finding a right answer, okay, that's right enough, and also says something good about us or you. Sorry. Voice is gone. Excuse me. I often just end up upset. It's funny, it's really broken. Say something I didn't mean, then get caught up defending ideas I don't care about or agree with. Well, whatever. Just take it slower. I can often see how these subtle changes in mood can make the difference, and I'm keenly aware of patterns. Well, you do right on and on and on here, don't you? Patterns of mood. Anyway, and how they can change drastically from moment to moment. I know all too well how this can change perspective, because pain can be seen as okay when you're in a good mood, but when you're actually in pain, it's different, at least in your mind. Yeah, well, it's easier to talk about doing than doing, you know, that's for sure. Something like that, complex thought. I think I've often had a hard time properly conceptualizing or completing ideas in my head. Also, a part of me is having a hard time being dishonest with myself. Right? Well, I'm just saying these are all, you're basically just saying I'm having this problem, you know, blending my personal ego into all of this, what's supposed to be an objective description of reality, and that there's these obvious conflicts between what I want to be true and what is true, and those kind of things. Words can be self-verifying template to project your thoughts, and I'm clearly a deep thinker. I just don't know if I am an intelligent or smart one. Yeah. Well, again, I would argue that intelligence, the intelligence to I mean, getting the right answers. Man, this is really weird. I can actually feel my larynx is not working. You know, it's like they're, you know, just ripped or torn. Anyway, you know, the point the primary point is intelligence is more about evading, okay, false notions or memes or ideas, and not so much gleaning a ton of trivia. So you don't need to know a ton of details to get the right answer. The right answers are usually not real complex mathematics. All you have to make sure you do is you don't have any stupid variables in there or any stupid things that are going to fuck the equation. So if you can keep the equation clean, you can use simple equations to answer general questions quite reliably, I guess I would argue. So the threat isn't gaining enough intelligence or raw information. The game is really evading the misinformation, the wrong facts. And if you can evade those, the rest, it all falls into place. So I'd sort of make that argument about the physics thing. Is if you can evade their jargon about waves and bent spaces and virtual thises and all the made up wooey crap. If you can evade all that nonsense and trying to make that part of the picture, you can make the picture work with much simpler elements. Regardless, it's given me perspective if nothing else. But I've often realized how I realize things and how and how it's usually not too pleasant to have these epiphanies, and often showing how thoughts are floating over there's no this ethereal and invisible plane. It's frankly, that's just mushy talk there. That can go anywhere, that you can have a number of thoughts which can affect you differently at any number of points. Yeah, but it's a law of averages thing. So even if you're having a moment where you're having a diluted, phantasmagorical perception of something, and you know that's probably not right, the fact that you know that it's probably not right will eat at you, and eventually you will come back to that idea and probably attempt to correct what you know to be something that just isn't quite right. It's like I'm aware, then I lose perspective and know I'm constantly wearing crutches because my mind's tomfoolery, but I know that I may distracted from proper learning processes from brain, along with avoiding other depressing thoughts. Yeah, well, mind wandering is a dangerous thing too, and I mean, I would think all people have some problem in their life, and they know they can't let it own them, so they have to, like, oh, no, I can't make my mortgage payment, or oh, this or that. There's some kind of thing that's bugging them, and they do know that they can't go through the whole day obsessing about it, because then they're not going to be functional in any other way, all that kind of crap. I just throw my mind maybe trying too hard in an off mood, attempting to be too accurate and trying to be too smart, often thinking otherwise inaccurate, whatever. Anyway, yeah, no miracle beliefs here. I am aware of philosophy, conclusions, the small problems, in whatever, and the fact that we're a product of these crude forces that we can be aware, but can never escape. Well, like I said, you can escape any time by just turning on the video game, or some other mechanism to escape, but just understand that's what it is. My mind often has a tendency not to necessarily overcomplicate things. It is and can, but too quickly jump and think too deeply, and yes, you do keep going on and on here, don't you? You're just rewording the same statement now, which has often caused anxiety, panic. Yeah, I suppose it's too little words, too complex an idea. It makes sense to me, but at least it's not as bad as it could be. Many people would say that this is just some sort of stupidity and overcomplication, which can be true in ways, but I say it may be above it by overreacting furiously to concepts and thoughts above typical understanding, with no one to bounce off of. Yes, well, no man's an island kind of thing. I mean, I guess there is a part of us that, even though it doesn't do any better, doesn't do you any good for somebody else to have a broken leg, that there might be some conversation about having a broken leg that distracts you from having to just keep it internal. I don't know, something like that. To this point, yeah, it may not be everything, but those chains of thought seem to keep latching, and I find that I often dig myself into holes by at least trying to be too logical and following this thinking out loud, like right now. I guess I'm just saying you can't take, every bit of your life is personal, but again, you can't take, when you're thinking, you have to think of it as a video game. You're just playing logic. Okay, I'm going to play logic, and I'm going to try to be logical, and so try to make it unpersonal, and just play it. I just know my mind may be trying too hard to make contrary, literally and figuratively, ideas make sense because of some need to rationalize through insecurities of mind to make them not real, at least internally. Like I'm not consistent state of unsatisfied and terrifying psychedelic trippings, whatever that is. It's almost like my mind is picking and builds the obsession by making a mess of a certain way that happens to be my cleaning up the mess. Well, this is like dreams. Dreams end up finding your vulnerabilities. So I argue that that's probably a legacy from the idea that the whole reason why we dream is to practice living, and there would be no point in your brain trying to manufacture something you've already seen. It's trying to manufacture things you haven't seen, give you a new situation. So it's been randomized, and that randomness is more effective as practice than doing something you've already done again. So over time, I would say that's why dreams got perverse. So you could argue that originally dreams probably were more related to events you've already done and you're just practicing. And then it got to the point where there was found to be a more advantage to those people who dreamed in a more elaborate way, because they hadn't experienced everything yet, and there was all kinds of new experiences they're going to face. And well, anyway, and the point would be is that the dream emphasizes the parts that your brain is somehow aware through some program of a weakness. It has a weakness, a vulnerability, something it's not confident about, and it picks on that because that's the weakness. You don't juggle very well, so it's going to force you to juggle, that kind of thing. So even when we're not dreaming, I would argue there's a certain amount of incentive evolutionarily to keep you paranoid, to keep you feeling insecure. I mean, that's why people have to win the gold medal more than once, It's because no matter wherever the goalpost is, there's always a higher goalpost and a further away goalpost, and the player wants to really prove that he's perfect. He wants you to make it even smaller and smaller and smaller, just because it can be. He wants to, the idea is this: we strive for a perfection, but it can be my way, no one else's no, and I'll end up not allowing anyone else to do it just to curb the obsession. Wow, this thing really goes on forever, doesn't it? How many more? Oh, finally the last paragraph. Okay, we have to read that. This is kind of an example of my point on how one sentence turned into this, only to reply to the depth of my point at the very least, something like that, because it's often too much to go over, at least to me right now. This is probably my circular thinking, which I gather notions from the ether of my negative moods. Yeah, okay, so I'm just saying one thought leads to another thought leads to another thought. You're saying that yours are highly motivated by some incessant, once you start spilling, then you become obsessed with spilling, and that's all you can do is spill. Once you start shaking, you start saying, oh, I'm shaking, spilling, and then that makes you nervous and you start spilling more, and so it feeds on itself, and so then you just get deeper and deeper into this, I'm making a mess, and trying to clean up the mess. And so by trying to clean up the mess, at the same time you're holding the glass in one hand, now you're spilling even more, because now you're trying to do two things at once. I know I'm at least okay with less thought responses sometimes, which in turn may help need someone with blah 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 blah. Yes, you put it blah blah blah. So now I was already blah blah blah. Thinking can be hard. There's so much more to say, but hopefully something can be gleaned from this in spite of how it could have been worded better. Anyway, apologies for my long response. Insanely long response. I think we should add some sort of superlative. Fantastically almost in the top 10, I'd say, of long responses. But, I guess it's worthy of conversation, just how much our psychology makes it difficult to just logically order the concepts and just explain how the ingredients You know, I mean, everything's a recipe. Everything we're just formalizing and trying to just say, look, this is all just step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, blah, 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 blah. And somehow that gets all messy, you know. And mostly because people have ingredients that shouldn't be on the ingredient list. Alright, sorry I'm making noises. The Internet of Things. Can't possibly mean anything. Who could that mean something to? The Internet of Things. Whatever. It could get motivated to kill pro-lifers. I could get motivated to kill pro-lifers too, LOL. Sanctioned killing of nameless fucktards without risk of punishment, fine with me. Yes, it would be great. Great video game and a really great real game. Yeah. Bastards. Anyway, doctors opposing criticism, circumcision. So this is just more, again, somebody with a, you know, smelly, slimy, fungus-covered dick, you know, just making rationalizations. Yes, you can find some doctors who oppose circumcision, but you can find a whole lot of them who say, yeah, it's just a simple sanitary medical procedure. It's probably a good idea. Better off in the long run. Blah 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 blah. You're not going to be able to demonstrate anything here. Again, we're not going to get any testimony, and you're never going to personally experience what it is to grow up one way and grow up the other way. And you're just making an accusation that somehow people who've been circumcised don't know how great it is to have a goopy fungus-covered dick. And, okay, fine. I'm not convinced. Anyway, Ralph Nader Radio Hour. Yeah. So why would I waste my time? What new facts are there? Are there any new facts? No. We know it prevents diseases. We know women, generally speaking, are better off because you're not likely to give them a urinary tract infection, along with other infections, frankly, and lots of venereal diseases and blah blah blah. We know there's no functional distraction, and the only functional distraction changes or breaks are kind of in a positive way, in the sense that obviously you're not just fucking your foreskin when you're in a woman. And what's the other one? Anyway, there's another one. Oh yeah, and you last longer, which is, you know, good. So what's you have no argument, all right? You just don't have an argument. There's nothing irrational about circumcision, just as there would be nothing irrational about somebody choosing to have a smaller nose, or or you're choosing it for your child if you could, or choosing not to have facial hair, or lots of defects in our physical function. I mean, if there was some little procedure they could do to give women bigger breasts. Yeah. I mean, all of this, if it was some other thing we were talking about, you somehow would all of a sudden become rational. But no, because it's personal to you, you know, no rationality. Hey you, hair looking great. Have you seen StreamYard yet? I've heard of it. I'm StreamYard. You know, this whole streaming thing wasn't all it's cracked up to be, frankly. I mean, even invited guests sometimes are idiots. But certainly streaming live to whatever's out there, I don't see too much function in it, frankly. I don't see anybody doing it well. Is this filmed under a bridge? Gee, profound. It's filmed in a basement. At the moment, yeah. Eventually I'll probably have some other location. But for right now, I'm in a basement. A dungeon, yes. I mean, it's not very attractive, so I have a cheap fix. So what? Anyway. Sex dungeon, yeah, well, yeah. In theory, only. Nobody who really has his perception lives in a planned community. I don't even know what that means, but I frankly love planned communities. I love the idea of having the store and everything right there, and a little fountain, and a park, and a this, and a that, and a bench, and a this, you know. I love it all being self-contained. I mean, perfect, wonderful, fantastic. You know, why would I find that offensive? I just don't like people. cluttering it up. What is your opinion on giving everyone over the age of 18 a universal right to die? Well, again, I wouldn't wait till they're 18. I mean, that's just silly. If something has lost the will to live, there's no point rationally in saying, I need to make them addicted. I need to make them want. Why do I need to do that? Why do I need to make something want? If they don't want it, they're not interested, they don't have a passion for it, like playing basketball or something. Why would I say they need to want to play basketball? They need to want to watch a baseball game. I mean, there's nothing on earth I'd say I need to make them want. Even something good like cupcakes or something. They don't like cupcakes. I need to make them want cupcakes. No, I don't need to do that. Why do I need to make them want it? Why? It's stupid. So anyone who says, well, right now I don't feel like living and I don't see any reason to keep living and it doesn't make any sense, so it's time to go. Why would I argue with them? If they're comfortable with it, fine. I mean, there's no reason to argue with them. In my opinion, I believe that it would be ethical since the act of procreation is non-consensual on behalf of the child. Well, it's non-consensual, period. That's where it should just stop. So obviously, yes, and it can't be consensual, and that doesn't mean it still isn't non-consensual. The fact is, it's non-consensual. That is, if you're going to force something to happen, you have to make sure it's a good thing. So if I was going to impose something on my neighbor, I have to impose good things. I can't impose a bad thing on them, right? It's that simple. If there's not going to be consent, if I'm not going to ask my neighbor, then, and I'm going to do something to his property, it's pretty damn sure that if I'm not going to ask him, it has to be something positive I'm doing. It can't be something negative. So yeah, it's kind of obvious. I would also like to know your thoughts on mandatory abortions in extreme cases. Well, I wouldn't even make that extreme either. Clearly, if you don't got the genetics and you don't got the financing, you should have an abortion. It's clearly the decent thing to do. Examples being if a 14-year-old gets pregnant or if a woman is carrying a severely deformed fetus that will suffer greatly if carried to term. It doesn't even matter whether the thing itself is going to suffer. The point is also, what's society going to do with it? And is it just going to be something somebody else has to be taxed out of their life to pay for? A mandated abortion is non-consensual, but not necessarily so under extreme circumstances. Well, it's clearly against will, not non-consensual. So you can't mix these two subjects. There's a point where you're allowed to impose. You're allowed to whap a rapist in the head, you know. You're allowed to commit an act of aggression to prevent an aggressor. So if somebody has the plague, you're allowed to stop them from, you know, spitting in the drinking water. But not necessarily so under extreme well, I guess you don't get the plague that way, but never mind. But not necessarily so under the extreme circumstances, in my opinion. But not necessarily so under extreme circumstances. Anyway, knowingly imposing life on a child who will not most likely break over 500 bones before the age of 5 due to brittle bone disease, for example, is far worse. Yes, giving birth to people who are overtly broken to start, already broken, and we know that the odds of getting broken are pretty high, and by the time you're 50 years old, 50% of the population has some disability, some kind of brokenness. I mean, yes, you don't start with something broken. That would be really dumb. This link is a very short documentary on two parents who knew how broken the fetus was and decided to have the child anyway. 2 monsters, 1 victim. Yeah, well, there's lots of people that have done that overtly in front of everybody else's face. Like that woman had claw hands, and she had a 50-50 chance, you know, that the kid would have and you know, her son ended up with it, and her daughter not. And the son is quite bitter. To answer first question, he's got a whole channel on the subject. Thank you. Inmendham is all for giving anyone the right to die. He said even a 5-year-old wanted to give up, it's fine with letting them go. Yeah, if they, you know, if they're have any capacity to, say, I understand life is this process, and you live maybe this long, or maybe you live this long, and then you die anyway. So I'm going to die anyway. And I'm just saying I might as well die now instead of going through all this crap that looks very uninteresting to me. All this falling in the trap, climbing out of the trap, falling in a trap, climbing out of the trap, falling in a trap, climbing out of the trap. Get fat, get thin, get fat, get thin, get fat. Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. Fuck it. Then yeah, he's convinced me. He's ready. Okay. Nice ring. You look fabulous. Oh, I should have worn my ring. yeah, I got it for $1. It has little diamonds on it. Well, fake ones. Lion head ring. So, what the hell? I haven't lost it yet. It's just like a record for me. So it is just kind of interesting to, a piece of jewelry. I've never worn anything. I couldn't even keep a wristwatch on my wrist. I can't. So it is kind of a fun experiment. Maybe I'll wear sunglasses or something. Some kind of other silly thing I'll do. It didn't cure my syphilis, but it did cure my herpes. Oh, cool. Anyway, so I made the syphilis remark because 606 is kind of a famous number, last week's episode for Dr. Ehrlich, who invented a cure, a treatment for syphilis. Syphilis was a real big problem. And so it's one of those, good things that happened. And it was, it took 606 experiments to, so it was a lot of work, 10 years or whatever, to find the cure. Anyway, Tyler Johnson, who's a bit of a, whatever. Vaping argument has to do with pod vapes like the original Juul, which have 20x the amount of nicotine. And look, this is all just bullshit, okay? I mean, I mix my own juice, so, you can have any dosage of nicotine from the very beginning, so that's just horseshit. This doesn't have anything to do with a specific vaping device or any of that crap. So this is just a silly part of the conversation. Clearly they're not passing laws or doing any of that stuff based on the type of vapor it is and what device produces it. So clearly their impression of vaping is what they've blamed vaping. Okay, it's not that a certain kind is the only problem. Whatever, bullshit. I mean, obviously these idiots who just want to make clouds. Okay, there's lots of people vaping, and they're just vaping flavors. They're not vaping because they're nicotine addicts, and they're just trying to make big clouds of vapor. I mean, it's obviously silly. I don't think I'd pass a law against it, but it's just silly. So, yeah, I don't see any point in endorsing that or saying anything good about that, because there's nothing good to say about just some silly behavior. It's like skateboarding on your hands or something. It's like, okay, it's interesting you can do that, but it's probably not very healthy, and it's probably not a good thing to do, so stop doing it because it's stupid. It's not that complicated. I really want to get rid of my facial hair. It has ruined me. Yeah, it gets in the way, that's for sure. You have common sense to, I would not want to be, in that sense, natural, right? I'm sort of natural in how I live, and I always like nature and that kind of stuff in the sense that I like the sun and I like things, about it. But yeah, it's not like, I would argue that, yeah, if I had to actually grow a full beard, I'd hate that. I hate the look of it. It looks stupid. And it'd be just annoying as hell, I would find. I just find beards annoyingly, it's the wrong place for all of that shit. So, yeah, I don't see any use in them. So, anyway. You have common sense to understand that Gagel is nothing but pedophile Benedict Chamberbatch. Is what the fuck is that? I don't know what the fuck that means. I think you might be ENTP under the Myers-Briggs test. Oh, how fascinating. You are very correct in your assessment regarding the vaping bans. It's clear there is an agenda underlying this move. Yes, and the agenda is just about the money. It's disgusting. If humans stopped attempting to manipulate one another, they mostly would lose interest in procreating. well, I just, you gotta make a distinction between procreating and sex. So that's a little bit messy. But clearly, there's still people walking around who think, you know, having a kid is like, hey, I'm cool. You know, they think it's like having a Maserati or something. I don't know. You know, like some sort of chick magnet. Maybe that's it. I mean, maybe, you know, maybe they think, well, if women see me with kids, then, you know, I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of thought process, but I have no clue what it would be. Because obviously that thought process never was a process in my brain. I just saw it as nothing but bad news. I just have no use for a kid. Like I said, if you know, what am I going to do with it? These people are neither young nor Turks. Okay, so this is, yeah, that's this very specific video, so I don't know if I want to get into that. The group itself was a communist terrorist group and had heavy hand in the death of millions of Americans, genocide. What are you talking about? This? I don't know where he's on this crap. I mean, that's just about that woman who went a little wacky and shot up YouTube, attempted to, did very ineffectively, but whatever. Like your thought, don't make assumptions and have some critical thinking skills. Just don't fall into the skeptical line of thought, whatever that is. That's where they want you. There are solutions for this materialistic quagmire. Says you. You can have a grasp of nature's law without the supra nature, the physical without the metaphysical realm. All of these philosophies. Look, there's no balance in nature, and there's no balancing with it. It's a cruel. Winning means not caring. And that's just the truth. Focus on the half of the pie, denying the rest you can't. Read Thomas Aquinas. Fuck you. Summa Theology and his on evil. The dense but seems you can follow. Why would I bother? I mean, you know, oh, let's go back 1,000 years and see what people 1,000 years ago who lived in a very mystical world had to say about things. And frankly, I already know how to do logic, so I mean, I don't need to be told about how you properly analyze something. I mean, if you're going to try to make distinctions between things, I understand how to do that. Okay, so I don't need instruction on how to tell the difference between black and white. So, but whatever. Fuck you. He's got some stupid title. He says, "My guardian angel prefers a Pilsner." Well, that makes a lot of sense. You're no fun anymore. True enough. First comment after a decade. Well, bravo. Why is there "Do Not God" on the site page thingy? It's kind of creepy. Creepy to who? And it's a .com website. What does "Do Not God" mean? Yo, wow, people really are stupid. My teacher says, my teachers said you major in what your passion is. Well, then you're a fool. My passion is running through a field of flowers. Passions don't pay bills or get you a job. Also, do you think college is a scam? No. It's way overpriced because of all the bullshit attached to it. It seems perplexing that we go into debt for the chance not to guarantee that we will get a job. Yes, well, the whole point, you probably should finance some of it, but only some of it. You know, and this idea that you're just going to spend money willy-nilly, you know, I mean, people take out a loan and just piss it away on hamburgers. Yeah, you certainly have to learn how to live right. People haven't figured that out, that, you know, if you buy a 6-pack of soda, it costs you 1/10 what it costs if you buy it from the vending machines, you know, that kind of stuff. Just seems we are stuck in a rock and a hard place. No, you make it harder and you make the rock rockier. I mean, people make things worse by just being fucking stupid in how they do things. You don't go to college, you're fucked unless you get lucky and become a useless jester to entertain the public, i.e. PewDiePie, or you go to to college, get a ton of debt, and just get a piece of paper, and a company is like, screw it, we'll just hire some Chinese for far less. Well, obviously it still does carry some weight, college. And now there are ways to learn, you know, where you don't have to pay as much. So I don't know what to tell you, you know. Yeah. It's a tough job market, I'll concede that much. But the real catch is become a cop or a civil servant in some way. And, you know, try to get a friend, you know, because it seems that's a network business, because they're all so fucking dumb. And you're saying these are pretty good jobs, pretty good pay for pretty little work. You know, it's got to be, you know, so the catch is just knowing somebody, because these people are really, especially all like the town inspectors, and, you know, it's such a racket. I don't understand why you defend someone who wants global extinction unless you are still nuts as well. Okay, that's the Zorak guy. So Zorak is some, you know, he's like one of the psycho killers. Like, he's a guy who has absolutely no talents or interesting personality, or is even attractive, but he has this grand notion of how magnificent he is. You know, so he's one of those types, you know, who's a complete mess, but thinks he's just architectural perfection. Kind of like the Amazing Atheist. Anyway, the only thing you have managed to do in all these years is become more mentally insane. I've probably become a little less, but it doesn't matter. You have no valid or logical answers to life's problems. Well, I clearly have provided tons of all of those things, so that's just silly. So, I mean, you can make the accusation, but you didn't prove it with anything. So why don't you quote something I've said and show how it's wrong? Oh, that, you know, too much of a challenge. Let's see. So somebody says, "You're not understanding and probably stop listening." He's not insane. Well, clearly he's wasting his time still here. So somehow he finds this intriguing. So if he knew that I was those things, he wouldn't bother listening. I don't understand why you defend someone who wants global extinction. I mean, global. I want universal extinction, cosmetic extinction. Yes, I want to take the idea of having a DNA molecule replication. Yes, I want to say that that's bad theory. Nothing good will come of it, okay, because the theme of it is just pointless destruction for the purpose of a master race of what? A master of what? Annihilation, glibness, the master glib. The most glib thing in the universe. That's the kind of thing the DNA will create, is the most glib thing possible. I mean, that's the kind of stuff it makes. It doesn't make, it makes Tyrannosauruses and glib things, okay? It doesn't make anything good. Good isn't the game. It isn't like the make it a good thing. No, it's just make it a winner, and the game doesn't have any decency rules at all. So any way you win is winning. Okay? It doesn't matter how much you cheat. And that's sort of your psychology, right? Fuck the fair fight. Anyway, unless you're nuts as well. Yeah, right. Pointless drool from a fat man. Thank you very much. Fatty drool. Fuck you, asshole. Well, gee, that's such a specific argument. Again, you just so nailed the subject. Anyway, so I think this will be the end. I'm getting tired, and the file size is getting too big probably, and the computer will fail, and blah, 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 blah. You could say suffering as a hermit bachelor is worth the prevented suffering of new people. Yeah, well, again, you're connecting things that don't really need to be connected. Sex does not have to be connected to procreation. It's very easy to have sex without making babies. It's really not that complicated, blah, 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 blah. That's what I tell myself anyway. My parents don't agree. But yes, clearly getting married, unless you're going to have kids, I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Unless you really know, hey, I got everything with this person. We agree on everything. We physically And that's hard to find, you know. So, you know, unless you can find that. I mean, clearly I'd want to get married if I was... See, you know, I really wouldn't ever get married. It's just a silly formality. Why should the state sanction a relationship? All that kind of... It's just silly. But I mean, the idea of having some real commitment would be nice, just in the case that, you know, you don't want to lose somebody to somebody else. But then my argument to me would be, if she's losable, if she wants to be with somebody else, then I can't keep her. You know, that's just being selfish. So you got to know that you always have to live in kind of an open relationship, in the sense that you always have to give the person the right to say, I don't like you anymore. You know, you're not as much fun as you used to be, or whatever the excuse would be. Or, yeah, you're just old and doddery and, you know, uninteresting, unuseful. You want somebody to be with you for all the right reasons, not a bunch of wrong reasons. So, yeah, so that's the whole... relationships are just intrinsically problematic, taken as anything but a vacation. I mean, you have a vacation, you know, with the woman. But it's really hard to do it in real life, I would argue. Obviously, people do it all the time, but I just mean, I wouldn't want to live their life, is what I'm saying. I watch their life, and I say, oh, shit, I wouldn't want to live that life. So anyway, till the next time and such, so forth and whatnot. I think we're done. Yeah, mostly. I will gratuitously vape right in the prohibitioners' faces. Wait till it's your turn, fucker. You know, live by the prohibition, die by the prohibition, you know. I can tax your shit too, if that's the way you want it. But obviously I have to become a majority to do it. That's the tricky part. I completely agree with you. I added because I can relate, LOL. I actually like what you talk about. Well, I don't even do that. So anyway, till the next point. Oh, look at those great points. All the positive comments. When I'm not, I'm off the job. So it's always like that. As soon as I got a job, you know, and the job got all much more complicated, many more things to do, all this kind of stuff. And then as soon as I left, all of a sudden the job got simple again, you know. It's always like they, you know, seem like a conspiracy. You know, the standards are always higher when I had to do it. When somebody else had to do it, no, standards are really low. Kind of bullshit. The world was against me. Clearly. Maybe. It's possible. Okay, maybe not. Anyway, till next time and such.